community of all stars, which has really been my anchor since coming to the UAE a couple years ago. And it's almost not, it's predestined really, because these groups had to come into contact with each other. Their missions are so complementary. The hearts and the spirit of each of the movements are so synchronous. I'm really excited for today's event and to see what further engagement happens between these two groups of people who I really care about and who have really inspired me. Ganesh and his organization, it's pretty obvious, are well known to most of you, and with good reason. Ganesh is a veritable icon in our field, and his organization, IC3, has done so much for this profession and to empower school counselors around the world. IC3 is short form for the International Career and College Counseling movement, and it is a movement with a mission to bring counseling in every school worldwide. It's reached over 90 countries and many thousands of schools already in support of that mission, and along the way they've helped thousands of young people find career paths through education that help them to lead more fulfilled, happy, and productive lives. And that's what we are all here to do as well. What makes IC3 unique to me is its focus on the counselor. So, you know, there are a lot of organizations that do these kind of events, but IC3 is really focused on supporting us as practitioners. So they have an annual conference, they have regional forums, they have the IC3 Live, which is these virtual programs that connect counselors and students. And a really cool thing, the IC3 Institute, it's a program that has trained and certified hundreds of school-based college and career counselors around the world, and completely for free. And Ganesh is at the heart of this movement, and a good metaphor at that, because he has a heart that is full and contagious. And he's a busy man. In addition to IC3, he runs a couple other organizations, including KIC University Assist, which helps with student recruitment for international, for universities, and the AHA movement, which, well, I'll let Ganesh explain that. But he's personally visited over 450 universities and helped 4,000 at least students across the world in their college and career plans. I don't need to say much more for Ganesh. I want to hand it over to him, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to introduce you guys. This is really cool. I'm excited to hear today. Thank you. Mr. Ganesh.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. um, I have to just clarify a couple of things. So firstly, thank you for that kind introduction. I no longer lead or run KIC University. I was one of the founders. Swaraj Nandan leads and runs it. I so-called announced retirement at 38 years of age in 2013. And my focus was on doing two things. One was to bring mindfulness and meditation in schools and help young people feel peace and joy in their lives. And the other area that, because I had been a teacher and a counselor for 17 years, that landed really with me was the IC3 piece. IC3 was born out of a survey of grumpy 35-year-olds on Monday mornings. We wanted to know why they were grumpy and what was the correlation between what happened to them in school and their grumpiness at work. And we found an astonishing 84% of the people who took the survey said to some extent or the other, their unhappiness at work was linked to the guidance or the lack of it that they got when they were in school. So young people are leaving schools like airplanes without a navigation system, and these airplanes then crash into a world of frustration, anger, despair, sadness. So what we basically ended up doing was we announced the IC3 conference in 2016, which was the first year in August 2016 that we actually did the conference. But we were very cautious about the fact that we did not want to host glamorous events. Our mission was very simple. We wanted to bring counseling in every school. And the UAE may be a slightly more privileged area of the world compared to some parts in South Asia or in Africa or in Latin America. but there's a vast majority of schools around the world that have no career in college counseling. So young people get good math and English teaching, but no career in college advice. And there is also a very narrow prism that has been used to look at career and college counseling. For most people, it ended up being college applications and doing the UCAS and the Common App, etc. And that is definitely not our definition. So as a practitioner for 17 years, as also a math teacher, I really try to broaden the conversation around career and college counseling, and broadened it to the point that we said every teacher needs to be a 10% career and college counselor, that every teacher needs to bring direction and purpose in their own classroom, in their school. This movement really was not a movement to start with. It was just one volunteer, that was me. Today, there are 300 plus volunteers. It was just one country, that was India. We are now in 90 plus countries, actually 95 countries to be precise at this time. And we've had everyone from a Microsoft that has been a sponsor to, folks from IBM, Renault, Uber. So industries come to IC3 events. We've got some of the finest universities. We've had everyone from Cambridge to Cornell participate at IC3 events. We've got schools from all around the world. And the reason why this group is really expanded and grown in this work is because it is not mine or Eric's or anyone's. We are very conscious about not letting IC3 become the fiefdom of any organization, institution, or individual. And that makes it very simple. We're not a membership-based organization. Our goal is not to expand our membership. Our goal is not to bring more people to IC3. Our goal is counseling in every school. We don't care about whether we call it the IC3 conference or the IC3 movement or the Daniel, Mary, and David movement. We can call it whatever you want. We essentially care about bringing counseling in every school. So I get unnecessary importance too many times, but it's really a collective effort of a large number of people. And the passion that Eric carries about IC3 or Rachna carries or Tabe here carries is probably as much or even more than the passion I have. And we really share our goal of really humanizing education. From the industrialization of education, we want to go back to humanizing education. Everything's a business now with education. Schools, universities, private practices out there. And so really, that's a little bit about IC3 and what we're trying to do here. And I would say that very simply, if you were to say, what does IC3 do? It does three things: sensitize, glamorize, and develop. Sensitize an entire community on the criticality and need of career and college counseling. And just in case we thought that developed countries were doing well, I went to a public school in Philadelphia, which had 800 students and one counselor. All the counselor did was print out transcripts and give them away. The whole concept of counseling is misunderstood even in the most evolved landscapes. Sometimes even in Singapore, I meet a counselor in Singapore, which according to me is one of the more evolved areas. And their definition of counseling is so narrow. So really sensitizing people about what this really means, what this means for society, what it means for peace on this planet. Because really, we are all soul doctors. I don't know how many of us remember a body doctor we visited when we were in 8th grade. The one who gave you the vaccine for whatever, or stitched you up for a fall. You probably don't remember the name of the doctor when you visited the doctor. But if I ask you, do you remember a teacher from when you were in 8th grade? How many of us would remember a teacher we met in 8th or 9th grade? Virtually everybody. The body doctor is forgotten in 5 days. Teachers are soul doctors. They're going to be with us for 60, 80 years of our lives. Even as adults, what we do as professionals is going to have an impact on a whole generation. Teachers are really building nations. We are more important counselors and teachers than the politicians, than the military, than the doctors, than the pilots. We're soul doctors. We're actually building the world. So I IC3 has really brought this focus back on. We're not a membership. Hey, it's me, and I'm so great and I'm so special. And we hate this approach at IC3. None of us is more special than the profession or the purpose with which we are here. And so we do not allow independent counselors right now. We do not allow any third-party agents to come to IC3. We're without membership. We record all our content and give it out for free. You go on our YouTube channel, you have thousands of hours of videos. So we are an open platform, no membership organization that wants to bring counseling to every school. Sensitizing people is our first goal. The second one is glamorize. We want to elevate our profession. Why is the counselor looked at as any less than the principal in a school? Would you dare to outsource the principal or the math teacher's job in a school? If not, then how can you even talk about outsourcing a career and college counselor's job? In many, many countries, this is happening. They don't have full-time counselors in schools, and they think that it can be outsourced. And we disagree with this. If there is a math teacher in school, there must be a career and college counselor in school. And so we think just because the impact of our work doesn't show up on a grade sheet, the grade sheet just shows maths, English, geography, history, and whatever else, and physics, and there's no counseling, right, where you get grades for counseling. We cannot afford to ignore this. This is really about having peace on the planet, and we need career and college counselors. It's a social necessity as much as an academic necessity. And the third goal is to develop. There's no point preaching career and college counseling and building a IC3 and not being able to provide training. So you have the IC3 Institute, which is a US public charity with associations in other parts of the world, where we're delivering a 1-year, 350-hour program with 4 weeks of residential teaching through a year for full-time school teachers. IC3 is only for full-time school employees and full-time university employees, some approved organizations, and of course, some independents who want to really do good quality work. So there's a 1-year, 350-hour program, which is taught by some of the finest people from around the world. And the cost of that program is zero, not a cent, not a cent. We have 2 individuals, Tabe, who's from Abu Dhabi, Rachna, who's from Dubai, who are in the program, going through a 1-year program. And these are actually accomplished professionals, but they are humble enough to sit on a chair called, I don't know, or I want to know. IC3 is a place where I really think that, it came to us very late, but we really are in an extremely dynamic field. The math that we teach does not change in 30 years. A line drawn from the center of a circle perpendicular to the chord bisects the chord. It bisected the chord 30 years back. It bisected the chord 1 year back. It will continue to bisect the chord 30 years from now. Subjects that disagreed with verbs in English continue to disagree with verbs. But careers and colleges are constantly changing. You can't keep guiding a student just like you did. So if there's anybody who needs help and training and regular insights and inputs, it's the career and college counselor. So the IC3 Institute really focuses on developing, refining, redefining, constantly updating the knowledge levels and the skill set of career and college counselors. So that's a little bit about and I would like to build on this a little bit with you. I promised to introduce the fundamental pedagogy of the IC3 Institute, which was the counseling laboratory pedagogy. And I'm going to share my screen here and so that all of us can learn more about the counseling laboratory pedagogy. I'm going to share, can you see my screen? Is that visible, my screen? All right, super. So, I was talking about, how math and English doesn't change in school. So a math teacher can keep coming back year after year and be doing the same thing, but a career and college counselor cannot. Career and college counseling is not for the graduating seniors or juniors. It is for everybody. It is for the 6th grader, the 7th grader, the 8th grader, the 9th grader. And the pedagogy that we advocate is the counseling laboratory pedagogy. And this is something I practiced for 17 years, and I want to share this with you so that you can take this back and actually have an operating counseling laboratory in your school. Essentially, what we are talking about is, you know, we call it the L2 concept or the laboratory and the library pedagogy. A lot of people have asked me, Ganesh, why do you call it a laboratory? You know, I understand physics laboratory. I understand chemistry laboratory. Why would a counseling office be called a laboratory? And I said very simply, because the definition of a laboratory, if you went on and looked up the dictionary, does not fit in very well with many of the other things that are happening in the name of the laboratory, but it fits in very well with with counseling, with career and college counseling. You know, I visited a school 2 years back, and I was looking at the chemistry lab, and there was a requisition slip in the chemistry laboratory, and for all the chemicals that they were ordering. And I noticed that the date on that was 2003. So for 17 years or 16 years, they were ordering the same chemicals in the chemistry lab. Of course, the students changed, but the chemicals were the same that they were mixing every year in school. Now, that's not a laboratory for me. Of course, you know, you want to give students the exposure, but a laboratory is a place to experiment, to explore, to discover, to invent. And every student needs to self-explore and explore within and explore outside of him. Careers and colleges have to be explored. And in a laboratory, you have a moment of insight. You have a moment of awakening. That's what happens inside a laboratory. It's not a place for repetition, and therefore the counseling laboratory, because good career and college counseling is about exploration. It's about challenging the student to go beyond historical data that's available on careers and colleges. No student can still visualize that a self-driving car will show up at his doorstep and it will be an Uber. Or a drone will fly their pizza into their home. You know, it's very hard for people to think about it, but the world of careers and colleges is changing dramatically, and nothing short of a laboratory can actually help young people make good choices. So laboratory for that reason. And library is not the Google library. You know, Google is the greatest library. Library is a library of insights that we create over a period of time. And through interviews, through exchanges, through engagement. So what we really do with this pedagogy is we follow the L2 concept. We have the laboratory approach where we are really creating a laboratory for exploration and investigation, and the insights that we garner are deep insights. They're not obvious insights that are available on Google. Those insights become part of our counseling library. It's not just the same data. And so essentially, you know, what I talk about is the decision circle. And we need to appreciate that young people aren't coming to school because school is an end in itself. School is merely a means to an end. Means to what end? Means to college? Well, yes, but really means to an end where they want to be peaceful, joyous, abundant. Why do we have grumpy 35-year-olds? If we really help, you know, a physicist become a physicist or a musician, not become a chemist, then we would probably not have as much turmoil. Our investigation shows that at least half the reason people are grumpy is because they are doing things that they don't love. And where people go wrong on a 5,000-mile journey is not at the 3,000-mile mark. They go wrong in the 200-mile mark. It starts in school. So we really as educators have to begin to take ownership of what are we doing to the world if we are not bringing guidance and purpose and meaning in young lives. And so young people are having to constantly make decisions. What subjects to choose, what activities to choose in school. Should I go on this trip? Should I do this? Should I not do this? And a lot of these decisions are being made in isolation. What college to go to, what career to choose. We're really saying that in the counseling laboratory, there is no isolation. You know, if one school in a city is competing with another school, how can that school teach collaboration to its children? You know, we've compared our children in grade 1 and 2 and 3. And when those comparisons became acute, that ended up in competition. When competition becomes acute, we have violence. One of the fundamental premises of the laboratory is we collaborate. Who collaborates? The counseling laboratory, who collaborates? The teachers, the parents, the students, the university community, the industry. Everybody collaborates. And it's possible to do. You may say, this is far-fetched. How do I execute something like that in a school? Well, you got to spend that 1 year with the IC3 Institute, or at least spend 60 hours in the IC3 Institute, and know that there is magic that we can create. Actually, if you watch my TEDx on YouTube, the TEDx actually is unraveling magic in schools through career and college counseling, because really what we are into, collaboration is magical. You know, this whole isolationist approach, you know, when we first did IC3, we had a lot of challenge getting schools to collaborate. Today we have 100+ host schools, you know, in different parts of the world that collaborate actively. We are 300+ in the community. Collaboration is actually the secret to great choices in the counseling laboratory. And what do we do when we collaborate? We investigate, we go deeper, we look deeper, right? We've lost our wonder in the whole way that we've put structures and formalized everything, but somewhere we've lost the wonder, you know, and therefore you'd see that outward mobility to certain countries has been great. And I would rarely find someone out of India, where I was practicing, saying, I want to go to Japan, because, you know, it seems so far-fetched, because, you know, the language was not right. And, you know, I want to go to an English-speaking country, etc. I can tell you, I had this young kid who loved Japanese language. He had visited Japan early on. He ended up, you know, doing a major where he studied Japanese and business, and at 26 was more successful than most doctors would be at 50. He was translating government documents and helping negotiations between Indian and Japanese companies. And oh my goodness, this guy made more money in a day sometimes, or in a week, than most people would in a year. And I was astonished. What really happened? This kid just loved a trip as a child, and to Japan with his parents changed his life. And so when you look within, you know, people say, I love this or I love that. Well, that's a hobby. Forget about it. That's not a career. Well, you haven't really helped that young kid explore. Every hobby is one of the most lucrative careers. A young man in 2001 in a school that I was at came and whispered in my ear, you know, I snooped into the emails of my principal and my friends. And, you know, my first reaction was, report this kid, and this is a criminal act. How can you, you know, spy on someone's email, etc. But this was an innocent, you know, kid in high school who did not, you know, there was no real coding at that time, 2001, you know, it was, but this guy had this twinkle in his eye. What was a criminal act, which was really his hobby actually at that time, is one of the most ethical. Hacking and information security is one of the most lucrative professions today. Multi-millionaires at 22, 23 years of age. We just have to look deeply. Young people behave a certain way. They might do certain things which don't appear to be appropriate to us, but when you actually do research, and this is not just research outside, this is not research with Google, this is researching who I am. What am I? Who am I as a person? You know, how am I different? You know, what are those things that are really important to me? When we do this kind of research, we collaborate across people, we then, manage to garner data. I like to use the word insights, but I use data because it's really the traditional word, data-driven decision making, etc. But that's really what it is. Young people are in schools to make good decisions, and good decisions cannot be made unless we collaborate to do research and gain insights. And when we do that, there are some real magical outcomes. I want to share, the IC3 Institute is doing some projects right now, and I want to kind of stop sharing my screen so that I can see everybody. But I'll give you just one or two examples. I was in Southeast Asia, and I had this large group of 500 odd students who I addressed, and one of the kids came up to me and he said, I have great counseling available, but really counselors are of no use to me because I want to study music. My father wants me to do business. There's no way that any human being can convince my father, let alone my counselor. And I said to him, maybe this is a counseling laboratory project. I need to take this back. And I brought this back and I said to him, son, let me have a few weeks. Let me see if I can help you. I'll take this back to the counseling laboratory that I run. I ran in a school in South India. And so I brought this back. Here's a young man who loves music, wants to study music. And here's a stubborn father, very typical, thinks this is a no-brainer. We're no way going to let him do music. And I called out 20 students. I didn't call parents, etc. at this time because I didn't have access to them. I just called out 20 students. They were class 8, 9, 10, 11, and maybe 1 or 2 in class 12. And then I broke these groups down into, I broke them down, these 20 kids, into 4 groups of 5 students each. The first group came up with extensive research and insights for me on the scale and size of music as an industry. I don't recall now, but this was many, many years back. At that time, it is about a $37 billion industry. So they came up with music as an industry. The next group of 5 students came up with 40 different careers that are possible with music. Not just music performance, but things like, merchandising with music, music therapy. Hospitals were using music to heal people. Right? There was a science around using music to heal people, and so on and so forth. 40 different careers around music. The third group of students came up with the career progression of 12 individuals who pursued an undergraduate degree in music. They actually showed what happened to people who did an undergrad degree in music. And the fourth group came up with the details on what the future would look like, with music. And, they even mapped the 4 industrial revolutions, and they said, well, progressively, up until a certain time, people were cutting sugarcane in the fields. They had no time for anything creative. Theater, drama, art, music was born because of automation and industrialization. And as more automation happens with AI and all of that, music is only going to grow as a field. My goodness, this presentation went to this, and I don't want to get into too many details, but this presentation with all of these insights reached this kid, and the parent. This kid ended up doing an undergraduate degree at a conservatory of music in the US in music with a minor in business to keep his father happy. The father agreed. There was such solid evidence. This is what happens in a counseling laboratory. If I, as a counselor, I had to do this alone, it would not be possible to do it. There are several other examples, forensic science, the way we investigated in the counseling laboratory, where might be a good, it's very rare to find an 11th grader or a 12th grader saying, I want to be a forensic scientist. What do? This guy is so clear. He knows what forensic science is, etc. How do you decide where to get this kid? Because there isn't really an undergraduate degree in forensic science per se, but you still want to find the most appropriate institution. The way we handled this was I actually invited a group of students to do research on the top 5 forensic scientists in the world. One of them was Dr. Henry Lee, who investigated John F. Kennedy's murder. Where did these top 5 forensic scientists go around in the world? Which universities were they at? How did they, what labs did they set up? What did they do, etc. We came up with 39 universities around the world that seemed to be the most appropriate places to go and pursue forensic science. I mean, not at the undergrad level in a degree title, but whether you're doing a biology and a psychology degree or whatever else, they had the infrastructure where even as an undergraduate, you could start to explore that area. Now, I was astonished. So a lot of what we do as counselors, we don't have the answers. We don't have the answers. And the counseling laboratory allows for us to investigate and find those answers. When a student asked me about German education, I had no idea about German education. I was so homed in on the US, I'd visited 469 US campuses. And I knew everything about American education. And I was so shallow in my knowledge about everything. But how do I turn that around as a counselor overnight? I used the counseling laboratory. I had a couple of parents who had lived in Germany. They came up with, and there were a bunch of students who investigated German education. They came up with a thesis in like 2 weeks. They presented to the whole school around German education. And it was so good, I can tell you no counselor can do a better job. Up until then, I thought it was only, the Holy Father that can help with German education. I had only heard about DAD, D-A-A-D. And I was like, oh God, Lord, please help me. And I mean, that was the only official organization that I'd heard of. But how could I guide someone who wanted to really do this? So I would say a lot of what we do can actually happen. And this actually has a magical impact. I'm going to finish very quickly here because I think we started a little bit late, so we don't have as much time left. And I have another commitment in 16 minutes. But what happens is when you get 8th graders, 7th graders, 9th graders to get out there and explore, they don't come in 12th grade being very demanding with their counselor or 11th grade. These kids firstly are inspired because suddenly they're translating all their classroom learning into the real world of careers and colleges. One of the things that the counseling laboratory does is it encourages the student to, it actually encourages them to go out and explore. And a lot of young people today do not want to study calculus at 9:30 a.m. and then use it 20 years later, or study any subject in the morning today and then use it 20 years later. The student wants to actually be able to use it by afternoon, 3:30 in the afternoon. If you really want a student to enjoy his learning, you've got to bring that context with the real world of careers and colleges. And that's what the counseling laboratory did. Essentially, I did not have to worry about students that hated physics or hated math, because they stopped hating physics and math when they looked at what physics and math was like in their life. If I had a student who hated physics, I just would tell him that, look, we're sitting in a room which is a physics laboratory. There's gravity at play. There's acoustics at play. We're wearing concave convex lenses. I would start to talk about sound waves that are entering the microphone in the computer and getting, modulated and being transmitted. And, the iPhone, I'd start to pick my phone and show him the physics in the phone, the math in the phone, the psychology in the classroom, the geography in the, I hated geography as a kid. But I didn't see the geography in my home. There's geography inside my house, and when you really translate every lesson, every page, every paragraph of every page can be as exciting as Harry Potter, reading Harry Potter. Career and college counselors and the counseling laboratory can do that. It can bring alive all the academic material and bring the sort of excitement in the classroom that does not exist normally. And a lot of people say that, what is the role? Career and college counseling is about college admissions. No, it's not. It's about altering learning outcomes in school. That's why every teacher needs to know a little bit about careers and colleges, at least related to the subjects that they teach. Because if they do, then there will never again be boredom. You know, our discovery was the biggest problem in schools around the world was boredom. Young people are getting bored in school. And if young people are getting bored in school, you know, we really needed to break that. And how would we do that? So the counseling laboratory was a solution. And then there were other things that happened, you know, research, lots of people learned to do research as 8th graders, 9th graders. You know, they learn to create a questionnaire. They learn to go out and interview people and make sense of that. They learn to collate data across different, you know, they learn to present some of their findings. They learn to work as a team. An 8th grader working with an 11th grader. What a phenomenal way to actually get this 8th grader ready to go to college or to make good decisions as he grows up. It's a great way. They learn to manage data, tons of data. So all that was a spin-off of the counseling laboratory. And then, of course, you know, lots of loyalty. How a student leaves the school really, really shapes how loyal they are. I saw that alumni giving was happening. People, schools always, you know, want more money or, you know, are asking for money or donations. But when people really feel that their lives changed in school, they are likely to donate to that school. And more importantly, we're going to have a peaceful world. You know, we're going to have, Gallup had a survey which said some, you know, 80% of the people in the world working today are either actively or passively disengaged. What a disaster. We have people going to work disengaged, actively or passively, because people aren't doing what they love. You know, I think that if we can help young people find meaning and purpose and find what they really love and show them a path to college and to, you know, making choices even in school that are in alignment with what they want to do, I think we're going to have a tremendous impact on society. Again, there's a lot more that I do here, but in the interest of time, and I want to leave some time for questions. So learning and implementing the L2 concept through the IC3 Institute, I would encourage, you know, my colleague here is here, Garima, and she can post some links for you. I'd love for you to watch a couple of videos on the IC3 platform. We have thousands of hours, like I said. You can look up the websites. The movement has many constituents to it. Eric introduced some of those, you know, the annual conference, the regional forums. We've had one in Dubai at Rachna's school. You know, we were to have one at GEMS this year in Dubai, but it didn't happen the last year. But I would encourage you to look that up. And then we hopefully we could do an IC3 regional forum next year in collaboration with the UAE careers community, and, you know, organize a phenomenal 100, 200, 300 people event in Dubai or in the Middle East. And then, you know, you've got the IC3 Live platform, which is, again, free access, and the IC3 Institute. The IC3 Institute is where we actually, you know, we teach, we explore, we do projects. And this is for accomplished counselors as well as new counselors. We really, everyone has their own learning curve. And, you know, for me, I learn so much just by being part of, you know, a spectator at the IC3 Institute every year. So, you know, one of the things I learned was essential as a career and college counselor was, you know, for me to chop any ego, any semblance of an ego that I have. Because the moment I sit in the chair called I know, it's a very dangerous chair for a career and college counselor. A maths teacher can sit on that chair, but not a career and college counselor. Everything is changing. You know, attention spans have fallen from 4 hours to 40 seconds in the last 20 years. Every career is fundamentally changing. You know, surgeons are doing surgeries in India, sitting in the US, and in US sitting in India, you know, so there is all kinds of things that are going on right now. And we've really got to awaken ourselves as a community to be able to make an impact. And every school needs to have many more resources allocated to career and college counseling. You know, we need as many career and college counselors as we have math teachers in school. Because what we are talking about is a curriculum which we deliver as career and college counselors, to 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, 12th graders. And as career and college counselors, we train all the 300 teachers in school on how to link up what they are teaching in school with the real world of work and life. We'll wash away boredom from schools if we can do that. And so how to actually implement this, what to do is what the IC3 Institute does. It's a 501c public charity in the US. So, people are actively, counselors are engaging, they're donating to the charity. We are a Robin Hood project. Schools pay nothing for most of the programming that we have. But then we get support from donors, etc., from different circles. We're doing tremendous amount of work in Africa. We have a sustainable development committee at IC3 that's integrating the 17 United Nations sustainable development goals with career and college counseling. Can you imagine bringing SDGs into career and college counseling? On the 25th of January, we have 2 senior leaders from the United Nations presenting at the IC3 live event. You want to just come to that event. Because think about it, we also have to imagine, how do we sustain our work? You are being given 300 students to counsel. Your career and college counselors are among the most brutalized and battered souls in school. I really, really sympathize with career and college counselors because they are the least understood and the overworked, sometimes I dare say in most cases underpaid, but definitely overworked. Because it's not like teaching 100 people math. I get 100 kids. Each kid is so unique. If I have to be an effective counselor, I really need time. So we really, really have to come together as a community, and this is not. It's really important for us that we support this community. So I want to say thank you for affording us this for affording me this opportunity. Eric is very much there. He's a voice of IC3 in the Middle East, and so is Tabe and Rachna, and I dare say Sulakshana as well. She's had enough exposure. She's been a host school as well with IC3. So I would love for us to take some questions before we end here. And Garima, if you can also share my email, I'd love to hear from you any feedback you have for us, and really in any way you want to participate or volunteer. We are 300 plus volunteers. I was the first one. I continue to volunteer, and we have about 16 full-time staff now. My colleague Jim McLaughlin was to join us. He's based out of Philadelphia in the US. But it was middle of the night. It was actually midnight for him. So I told him, Jim, I hope I live up to your expectations. Please allow me this chance to do a solo. So I've managed to, but he comes with 16 years on the university side. He was at Drexel. So please do reach out to Jim McLaughlin. You can reach out to us on LinkedIn as well. We'd love to hear from you. But questions, let's see. Maria, I'll let you moderate any questions if you're seeing any questions. Or if anybody would want to just, unmute and share your comment, thoughts.
I'll let Eric take the driver's seat in the Q&A. Would you like to take it from here, Eric?
Can I say something here?
Yeah, Rachana, go ahead.
Yeah, so I have joined the one-year course of career and college counseling. I think Tabitha and I have joined this program since September. And it has been wonderful. It's been an eye-opener. We've learned a lot about colleges, careers. We've learned about universities, how to start a university. We've learned about various ethics and courses and new trends, new age careers, and lots of things that we've learned. It's a lot of great information. And I would, whoever is looking forward to learn and, gain more information, I think this is a great course to be at. Absolutely. That is something that I would definitely suggest everyone to have a look. And it's free for counselors, so there's nothing, it's just, they just need to invest your time in it. There's no money. So it's just that once you have the time, I think it's a great course. Tabitha will agree with me and can say a few words here as well, because we've done presentations. We're making a research book now. We're doing, like how is it, counseling laboratory. So I'm in the group where we're doing agriculture and food sciences, a whole counseling laboratory. We made a 60-page research on the whole, thing, and you just sent it to the IC3 conference about how it's the whole career will look like. So you can imagine if we do that in school, people come, people go, the counselors, the books will remain there, and students will have the knowledge there. So looking at systems so this teaches you systems to have in school where you can actually keep them well placed. So if counselors change, the students don't get affected. They have the information, they have the library where they can pick up all these things. When a counselor goes, the whole school is, the students are at a standstill and shocked, like, now what do we do next? How do we go about it? Now who's in there, the new one? How do we adjust to somebody new? But here, when you have systems and you have books and the library ready with all this information, I think you can take forward, I think, with anybody who...
Thank you so much, Rachana. That's a great testimonial for IC3. Can we keep the Q&A more about development of our practice? Ganesh, you're an incredible speaker. IC3 is an incredible movement, but if we want to remember that we want to be enhancing our practice, if we can ask questions, maybe take in some case studies from your particular practice. Eric, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, yeah, thanks a lot, Maria. I have a question about this actually. One of the most compelling things you talked about, Ganesh, is about how you've empowered students to do the research themselves, and that's what was the common thread with what you were saying, Rachana, as well, is that this is more than the counselor. This is about a system and a place for students to experiment. I know I see my buddy David here from Dwight Dubai, and he works so hard to get his students to be the engines of their own research. And I wonder, Ganesh, you were talking about these fantastic research projects by students. I wonder practically how you envision, or how you can direct us to start something like that in our own schools. Just one more part to this question is, our students are busy. They have the things that they need to do for the marks on those report cards. And you have them doing these massive exploratory exercises and developing what you called the fun of learning, right? But how do you get that started? When I send my students stuff to research on Unifrog, they go from A to B to C, but nowhere else, and I want to know, how do you institutionalize that approach? So sorry for the long question.
Yeah, it's amazing, how I always, in the early part of my practice, I underestimated what the students could bring to the discussion, and they are, I would say the example that comes to me right now is a 26-year-old dentist that I met in the city of Hyderabad here, who told me that I'm fed up of looking at ugly teeth for 5 years and I want to do hotel management. And I was astonished, because I said, if there was any semblance of, the fact that he did not like this profession and he hated it so much, he did not get it until he first, 1 year into the dentistry program, where he had to actually look into people's mouth. And so many people give up medical education when they do the dissection of a human body in the first year. And so the experiential aspect, getting answers is not the solution of what medicine or what dentistry is about. Actually going out and exploring and finding those answers for yourself is very important. And if you structure those projects in a way that, so, it is about us not telling them what to do, but what questions to ask, what would be most appropriate. And so what we did was,
is it showing up on a report card, or do you have a weekly class with them? I'm just
yeah. So you're talking about inspiring.
Yeah.
You're talking about inspiring them. Why would they do it? Well,
right.
They would do it in 8th grade because it actually helps them with their curriculum in 8th grade. You know, if I'm pursuing a particular subject or a particular, you know, I have geography or history, you know, and I have a project that I do along with that, where I'm looking at what are the careers around history, etc. That only brings me back into the classroom more excited about wanting to study history and look at certain things. So this whole, there is no contradiction between, you know, your grades and your exploration. You know, that it doesn't show up on the grade sheet. Well, it does. The learning outcomes are impacted directly because you do this research. Because you're going to be an excited learner. You're going to have more purpose and meaning in the classroom because you've explored careers and colleges in this area. You know, the University of California, Santa Cruz does something around astronomy for school students. And I see some phenomenal work coming out of it. They've explored astronomy and they realized this is what we want to do. And then they would go out and, you know, pursue that education. So a lot of young people, I still remember a young boy who used to watch the sky for hours in 5th grade. In 5th grade, he used to be sitting on the terrace of his apartment block and watch the sky for hours. And nobody really knew, you know, and he loved it. He loved this whole idea. He ended up discovering a comet, you know, which the European Space Agency acknowledged. But just a hobby of watching the sky ended up in a career, you know, that he really liked to do it. So as far as the structure is concerned, how do you inspire them? I think, Eric, there's a lot for me to share on that, you know. You got to get the buy-in. Some of these student projects that happen in the classroom, you involve your teachers a little bit. I know it kind of sounds a little distant right now with what we've got, but you can actually do that. It is possible to do that. We as counselors need to be, you know, innovative in how do we assign the project. For example, the forensic science area, I had no clue about what forensic science is, and I had no clue how to go about choosing universities for someone who wants to be a forensic scientist. So I needed 2 days to think through this, and I said, okay, let's try to do this. Let's find out 5 people who've been great forensic scientists and what universities did they associate with. Now the students did the rest of the work, but what was the starting point of this research? We needed to provide that. Yes, Eric.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you, Ganesh. I guess what I'm wondering is, you know, practically when we're assigning work to students, do you have a weekly class with them? Are they getting credit for this work? Is it something that I'm just wondering practically how we bring this awesome vision of yours into generating that buy-in with the students, because ultimately, as you know, in the school, we are fighting for time, right? We as counselors, we are like on the periphery of the core subject. So I'm wondering how we advocate for more time in our schools and then build that requisite work that the students are doing then, so we're not doing it for them.
So I think that's a battle that we are all fighting, and I think the more counseling gets embraced as a critical mainstream function in school and not as an, you know, ally to the other pieces, the more people implement the counseling laboratory, the more we will see impact on learning outcomes, the more we will see impact. So parent and school relationship is another area that career and college counseling impacts very significantly. You know, there's a lot of conflict happening in many schools between parents and schools. And that's being addressed because parents are being involved in the laboratory. They're being involved early on. So I think, Eric, what you should do is ask some of our current institute cohort on how they are submitting proposals, how they are arguing in favor of giving more time. And yes, we have a recommended curriculum, 40 minutes a week for 9th graders and 10th graders. No in-person for 9th and 10th graders, but 40 minutes for 9th and 10th graders a week. We've got activities and pieces that we recommend we do during those pieces. 11th and 12th graders, there's more direct one-on-one interaction, small group interaction, in addition to these 40 minutes. And then the younger kids, the 5th, 8th, 6th, 7th, 8th middle schoolers, the teachers that we actually equip, they bring them in. And then there's also a recommended plan with involving parents early. You don't want to be in arguments with parents in class 11 and 12. It is because we did not engage parents when the kid was in 8th and 9th and 10th grade. That's why you end up sometimes in a counseling office in an unpleasant exchange. The parent wants this and the counselor is recommending this and the student wants this. So when you engage the parent early, we do not have a situation where, where we have a conflict with the parent. The parent wants you to apply to all the Ivy League schools. He wants you to apply to all the, do all the Oxbridge and do all UCAS and do all these 50 applications. And it's crazy. The counselor is going to be worried, if every kid wants to apply to 50 universities. But the trust was not established early enough. When a school engages a parent from 8th grade onwards, when they start to see that, it's very different. I'm afraid I pushed my meeting back by 10 minutes. So this would have to be the last question I can take.
Thank you so much, Ganesh. We have some real all-stars in this group. I would like to open just to one more question if we could from this group, because I'm really interested with the perspectives we bring here. I mean, thank you so much, Ganesh, for your answer there too. Anybody have a question? You could throw it in the chat if you want as well.
I can see Adele is saying that he's also trying to push this for his school as well, to gain more engagement with students. Definitely one of the challenges that career practitioners across the world are probably facing. I can't see any other questions in our chat though, Eric.
Thank you. Well,
actually, I've been trying to do that for years, but unfortunately the school doesn't allow more time for engaging with the students because, of course, academics take over all the time, and they don't think that career counseling is as important as it should be, as Ganesh said.
And the great news about that is, if we thought about taking a trip to Mars even 10 years ago, we thought we probably would have said that's impossible. And here we are planning, NASA planning their next journey to Mars. So anything is possible. And I think that, and this is what we talk about in the UAE careers community, and from hearing Ganesh's talk this morning, definitely aligned with what IC3 are also advocating, is that it's not enough to just give up and sit quietly in a corner. As careers practitioners,
we need to fight for it as much as we could in order to make this into a reality. So never give up.
Exactly. And I think it's not really about fighting more than it's about educating and co-creating and being the advocate and the role model for the benefits of good qualified careers practice. Eric, thank you so much for bringing the IC3 to the UAE careers community. And Ganesh, thank you for this incredible talk today that you offered all of us. Thank you to everyone for joining us. I hope to see you all again at our next UAE careers community, where we will be bringing sustainability and careers in sustainability. We will have Ziloop and the founder, Eric, who will be talking to us about careers at Ziloop and the incentives and initiatives that they're taking in the UAE and across the world. Join us every month for talks just like this. We have private meetings where we talk about practice, and we have public meetings where we bring practitioners or careers practitioners like Ganesh to talk to us about how we can enhance our programs. Join us for the virtual fair. The UAE careers community was brought together because as a region, we have needs and requirements. And, you know, wherever you are in the UAE, you have a Ministry of Education that's kind of making things happen in a certain way, and that sometimes makes it a little bit more challenging. Not that what we're facing is any different to any careers practitioners around the world, but sometimes speaking to somebody from the region kind of normalizes the challenges you're facing. So join us in March for our virtual fair. Bring your students, bring your parents, bring yourselves. I'll see you all again. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Maria. It's so great to see you all. Really
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Maria. It's been great.
Thank
you guys
you.
are
Thank
awesome.
you.
Excited to spin back into my school orbit with new energy and new stuff. David, so cool to see you. Thanks for coming, man.
Mr. Eric, can you on WhatsApp or in the chat box, can you add the March event for the UAE careers?
Yeah, you know, I have your email. I'll share and I'll send in the
Yeah, so
WhatsApp
great.
as well. But I'll put it in our chat for anybody else that's here. I will happy to share.
It would be great if you could just mail the details.
Yep. Okay, we should have all your email addresses. Yeah, definitely. Our kids are really excited about it. We're starting to engage them with it. So you guys have a good one. I'm gonna send it. You check out the UAE Careers Community website. It has it too. I'm gonna send to your WhatsApp, Thabet, and we'll send to you as well, Andalib, on the email.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.